Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. If you're here to learn how to get the thickest damage numbers with the newest featured 5-star character in Zenless Zone 0, Jane Doe, well, that's probably why you clicked on this video, which will teach you everything you need to know about Jane Doe. This video was filmed on the early access server and is not indicative of the final product. There may be some changes on release, so be sure to check the comments down below to see if there are any. We're squeaking on borrowed time here, so let's just scurry right into it. Jane Doe is a Physical Anomaly DPS character who puts the assault in assault, because her enemies are going to be super salty, taking million damage assaults from her. Jane Doe specializes in outputting massive assault numbers because her assaults can crit. In this video, we'll go over her kit, drives and stats, Wenjins, Mindscapes, teams, many free-to-play accessible showcases, and finally my opinion on Jane Doe. In order to understand Jane Doe, we need a crash course on Anomaly. Basically, Jane will apply Physical Anomaly onto the enemy, where once the circle is full, you're able to trigger an assault, dealing massive damage scaling off of Anomaly proficiency instead of crit. And you can apply more Anomaly to the enemy based on the Anomaly Mastery stat. As for her kit, Jane has two states, Passion State and not Passion State. Jane starts off in not Passion State, indicated by this empty blue bar near her portrait. Performing most actions will fill up her passion, and once it's full it will turn red and she will be in passion. Your goal is to fill her up and to enter Passion State as quickly as possible. As we can see, by simply performing her full basic 6 string plus a basic 4 string, she enters Passion State. We can see that, according to this chart, there are a few standout options to generate passion. Most notably, dodging an enemy's attack and defensive assist with the assist follow-ups are great and fast ways to generate passion. You can of course just mash your basic attack combo to enter Passion State as well. However, another incredible way to be passionate is through her chain attack, which fully fills her up. Now, why does a rat's passion matter besides creating a population crisis? While in Passion State, Jane gains a lot of attack and applies 25% more Physical Anomaly to the enemy. As we can see, Jane will get 2 attack per Anomaly proficiency above 120, so at 420, nice. Anomaly proficiency, Jane will get the maximum 600 attack. Speaking of scaling off of Anomaly proficiency, her core skill also scales off of it. Her core skill allows her assaults to crit, with 50% crit damage, which is thus basically multiplying her assault's damage by 1.5. The crit rate, however, scales off of Anomaly proficiency as well, and at core 7, she needs 375 Anomaly proficiency to have 100% crit rate on her assaults. Alright, we went on a bit of a tangent, but going back to Passion State, Jane will stay in Passion State without any time limit, and all her attacks will benefit from the attack boost and Anomaly application rate increase from her passion. Most of her attacks that she does during Passion State will consume passion, and once she hits 0 passion, she'll go back to the not Passion State. However, as we can see in this slightly expanded chart, Jane has some options that do not consume passion, and in fact still generate passion even while she's in Passion State. These include her Sal Chow Jump, Dodge, and Defensive Assist. Knowing this, you're able to permanently stay in Passion State in many situations by using these options. Jane also gets 2 additional attacks while in Passion State. Her Passion Dash attack is an enhanced version of her dash attack that goes immediately into B4, thus being an effective gap closer while also having minimal opportunity cost for continuing her combo string. Once she fills up her passion, she also gains access to 1 charge of Sal Chow Jump, as indicated by this little red ball thing next to her passion bar. Pressing and holding the basic attack button will cause her to spin to win, increasing her interrupt resistance and generating passion even while in Passion State. She's also conveniently invincible during the finishing strike portion of it. Now, one more unique trait about Sal Chow Jump is that it's one of, if not the only, although I haven't confirmed every single hit in her entire kit, that can trigger assault throughout its hits. Take this example, the enemy's assault meter is nearly full, and if we use Jane's ultimate, assault doesn't trigger until the very last hit. and thus all the physical anomaly application from her ultimate was pretty much wasted, leading to a concept that I'll be calling over-assaulting. Most abilities in the games are like this, with the final hit of any individual attack being the one to trigger assault. However, Cao Cao Jump's spin portion of the attack is able to trigger assault during the spinning part of it, thus leading to minimal physical anomaly application wasted. Next we have her EX Special, which is just a great tool for applying a ton of anomaly per second, being one of the fastest ways for Jane to apply anomaly. While her EX Special has the second best anomaly application in her entire kit, avoid over-assaulting the enemy with it. Up next, her chain attack fully fills up her passion. Although the chain attack itself consumes a decent amount of passion, still this is obviously worth it for many reasons, since it has the third best anomaly application in her kit, fills up her passion, and has great AoE. This makes her chain attack a great option for disposing of multiple weak enemies. Her ultimate unsurprisingly deals the most anomaly, and it also fills up her passion and then consumes some of it for the ultimate attack itself. Alright, and lastly, we have her faction bonus, which when Jane is paired with another anomaly character or another NEPS enthusiast, Jane applies even more physical anomaly, so you definitely want to fulfill this passive. Anyway, here is the entire chart of her kit from my testing and theory crafting. Hopefully all of it's correct, but yeah, if it's not, check the comments down below. Now you're probably wondering, what about combos? Combos is a tricky thing with Jane. Unlike, for example, a more straightforward character like Zhu Yuan, who can do the same string against any stunned enemy, Jane is much more freeform. Different enemies have different assault anomaly thresholds and thus require different combos. I'll walk you through just one example here. We've stunned this enemy, and prior to the stun, I filled up the enemy's physical anomaly, so that way it will be assaulted by the chain attack. Then we cancel the chain, do a passion dash attack to close the gap, into an EX Special to fill up the enemy's physical anomaly. After that, I use Cao Cao Jump's spinning attack, which can trigger assault midway to not waste any anomaly application and thus to extend her passion state. Then another EX Special with some basic attacks allow us to squeeze 3 assaults in during a single stun window against this specific enemy. Anyway, we'll go through more examples later on in the video during the showcase section, and it will take some practice to learn when and where you should use Jane's ability to avoid things like over-assaulting and to maximize stun windows. Now for talent priority, this is actually quite interesting. Because Jane doesn't gain any additional anomaly application from leveling her talents, and because most of Jane's damage comes from assaults, her talent levels aren't nearly as important as traditional DPS characters. As such, you should absolutely prioritize her core ability. However, if your build has about 420 or more anomaly proficiency, which is very attainable if you use her with Seth, then you can keep her core passive at level 6 or level E, whatever you want to call it. This is because it takes 420 anomaly proficiency to bring her crit rate up to level 100 at level E, which also happens to be the same amount of anomaly proficiency needed to get to the max 600 attack on her passion state. Still, I still plan to bring this to level F eventually, because there are times where she doesn't have Seth's buff, and only needing 375 anomaly proficiency to max her crit rate is a nice option. After her core passive, you can then level her basics, dash, special, and chain roughly equally, I'd say, and finally her assists. Personally, I'm not going to level her abilities past level 10, at least not for a long time, as those two final levels roughly increases her overall damage output by a measly 1.7%, which just isn't worth the resources in my book. And now we can squeak on over to everyone's favorite part of the video, math. Woohoo! Starting with her drive sets. The 4-piece Fanged Metal is an interesting set because unfortunately the first assault doesn't actually get its 4-piece buff. As such, I've included a buff up example and buff down example where we can see the third to last column, with the first assault only doing 82.7% of the subsequent assaults. Now for my full rotations, I'm assuming we'll be outputting 3 assaults with the first assault not getting the buff, and despite these issues, the 4-piece Fanged Metal is still her best 4-piece drive set, assuming we're doing more than 1 assault on the enemy. For the 2-piece set bonuses, both the Freedom Blues and the Hormone Punk are her best options. So generally speaking, just use whichever you have better pieces with. The 2-piece Puffer Electro is also a usable choice. And as for other potential combinations, triple 2 pieces is okay. at around 92% of the Fang metal. Now the 4-piece Freedom Blues seems like a good option in theory, but after testing it, I found it to be a bit of a mousetrap, as triggering assaults is often about hitting breakpoints and not just about the raw anomaly applied. Not only that, but assault breakpoints are different for different enemies, which leads to a lot of issues when trying to accurately calculate this. So anything that honestly involves anomaly application rate is unfortunately an estimation. Anyway, with all that yapping out of the way, the Freedom Blues both on paper and through my own testing felt underwhelming. Now the 4-piece Woodpecker Electro is a weird choice since Jane scales horribly off of crit, but the up to 27% super attack is very powerful. And if you're playing a Hyper Jane that's on field most of the time where you dodge regularly and you also have energy for her EX special, the Woodpecker Electro is a usable set. However, my advice is to just farm the 4-piece Fang metal, as you're also farming for the Hormone Punk, which will effectively fully build your Jane Doe from just farming a single domain. Next, let's talk about main stats. Main stats is actually an interesting topic for Jane Doe. Fortunately, slot 4 is the easiest one to nibble out of the equation, as you should just use Anomaly Proficiency. As a refresher, Anomaly Proficiency increases the damage that Assault does. Not only that, but Jane's passive really wants her to have 420 Anomaly Proficiency or more, and as such, attack percent in slot 4 falls far behind. For slot 5, both physical damage and attack percent are quite solid, with, in my opinion, physical damage generally being preferred, but there are many situations where attack percent can be just as competitive. Slot 6 though is where things get tricky. To keep it simple, overall I recommend Anomaly Mastery, which by the way is how fast she can assault her enemies. However, attack in slot 6 provides you with bigger assaults, and against certain enemies you're often able to still squeeze in the same number of assaults during an enemy's stun window, even with an attack percent piece in slot 6. In these situations, the bigger assaults tend to be more valuable. However, if you're playing Hyper Jane or Disorder Jane, or you get an additional assault during an enemy stun window, then Anomaly Mastery is preferred. Overall though, it's hard to go wrong with Anomaly Mastery, whereas it's easier to go wrong with attack percent. So overall, I still recommend Anomaly Mastery for most situations, but for those of you that just like bigger numbers or know what you're doing, attack percent is a viable option. Up next, we have substats. Again, because of her core passive, Jane benefits a lot from having 420 plus Anomaly Proficiency. Fortunately, with her base 114 Anomaly Proficiency, 75 from the Rainforest Gourmet Wenjin, 92 from Drive Slot 4, and 100 from Seth, she's already at 381 Anomaly Proficiency. This means she only needs 5 Anomaly Proficiency substat rolls to break 420. This chart shows that even when she's over 420 Anomaly Proficiency, an Anomaly Proficiency roll is still one of the best, with attack percent being roughly just as good. Flat penetration is surprisingly decent as well, with flat attack and crit being not so great. And next is time for the Wenjin. I'm going to keep this simple. Overall, I recommend the craftable Rainforest Gourmet as her go-to free-to-play friendly option, because you're able to precisely control when you want its buff by simply using her EX special. However, it's worth keeping in mind its downtime, where its performance will fall even further behind her signature Wenjin. Speaking of her signature Wenjin, the Sharpened Stinger is one of the few signature Wenjins that I'm not giving a full 5-star rating. This is because its condition can be annoying to fulfill, especially when it counts. You have to really keep in mind how many dash attacks you've done, whether or not this is her quote-unquote first engagement, or when you last performed a perfect dodge to maximize its value. For Hyper Jane playstyles, this usually isn't a huge issue, but for the other Jane playstyles, it becomes more annoying to keep in mind. Still, assuming decent uptime, this is a significant upgrade over the Rainforest Gourmet due to the bonus damage it provides and the 40% anomaly buildup rate, at least when you have 3 stacks on this thing. Up next, we have Grace's signature Wenjin, the Fusion Compiler, which is another awkward choice. Using her regular special is bad and slow, but yet still kind of worth it for this thing's buff. I figured, okay, you'll probably have maybe 1.5 stacks on this thing on average, so it's a perfectly usable option being competitive to the free-to-play friendly, craftable Rainforest Gourmet. One more weapon I wanted to highlight is the Weeping Gemini. This craftable Wenjin is another very free-to-play friendly Wenjin, but has some uptime issues. However, against beefier targets where you output 6 or more different anomalies on that enemy before their stun window or before they die, then the Weeping Gemini starts to outperform even a well-managed Rainforest Gourmet. What I also like about the Weeping Gemini is that it hilariously leads to the largest possible nuke numbers for free-to-plays, which is fun as well. Overall, this is a perfectly usable and solid free-to-play friendly option with its own comparative advantages and disadvantages. And up next are Jane's Mindscapes. This part of the video has the worst retention, so here's a TMZ exclusive of Jane eating her breakfast. Mindscape 1 does a lot of stuff, allowing for a better Passion State uptime via an additional spin to win, more physical anomaly buildup, and 30% bonus damage. Obviously, this is an incredible Mindscape, which is a bit difficult to fully quantify, so here's an estimation of how much additional damage that it does, which is around plus 18% more damage. Now, between her signature Wenjin and her M1, it's another tough call, but if you do plan to pull more for Jane in the future, I would get her M1 because that puts you closer to her M2, which is pretty broken. If you don't plan to invest more in Jane in the future, then the Wenjin banner is on average cheaper due to its 75% rate, whereas the character banner will put you closer to another featured character if you lose the 50-50, so just pick whichever you're more comfortable with. Speaking of M2, defense ignore and 50% crit damage on her assaults is absolutely bonkers. M3 gives 2 levels to her talents, which is a joke for Jane's damage since she doesn't deal much damage from her talent levels, and M4 gives the team a bit more anomaly damage. M5 is another 2 levels to her talents, which is another expensive joke just like her M3. And M6 is really bizarre, making her scale a bit better off of her regular talent multipliers because of the additional crit, and dealing an additional proc of damage on assault. This honestly needs more testing, so keep in mind that I might be overestimating or underestimating its performance. But to me, it seems very underwhelming considering you have to get M3, M4, M5, and M6 just to get this thing. Still, by the time she's at M6, she'll do around double the damage of M0. Now, what kind of rat would Jane be without her posse of sewer-dwelling informants, aka her teammates? Jane has 3 main playstyles that I'll also showcase shortly after this section, and those playstyles are Hyper Jane, Disorder Jane, and Stun Jane. Now, right off the bat, one of Jane's best teammates is Seth. Seth provides Jane up to 100 anomaly proficiency, which massively increases Jane's damage output, and he can be run as either a pseudo-stunner with the Shockstar Disco, or as more of a support with the Swing Jazz. Seth also happens to fulfill Jane's faction bonus since he's also a NEPS. Either way, you'll want to position Seth in the slot right after Jane since his quick assist trigger actually swaps to the previous character instead of to the next character. Now, with Seth out of the way, the third slot can be a support character like Rena or Lucy. With Seth quick assisting to the previous character and a support quick assisting to the next character, both Seth and the support will constantly be quick swapping Jane onto the field. This creates a Hyper Jane team archetype whose goal is to buff Jane's damage as much as possible and to focus on providing Jane a lot of field time for more assaults. Alternatively, you can go the Stun Jane route with stunners like Ambi or Kaleda in the third slot. Ambi is a great stunner who doesn't necessarily need much field time, and thus you're able to keep Jane on field for longer for more assaults. Alternatively, a longer field time stunner like Qingyi forms the legendary Rat Cat Robo Cops team, where you sacrifice some of Jane's field time for massive assault nukes for when Qingyi inevitably stuns the enemy. Anyway, stun Jane archetypes are powerful and are great options. Next we have the most disorderly team, Disorder Jane. This won't be a tutorial on disorder, but basically when you apply multiple anomalies, you do more damage. A disorder team with Jane, Grace, and Rena works well, and you can bounce between shock and assault to deal big juicy disorder nukes. This playstyle will likely require the biggest brain to use though, but I believe there will be some phenomenal play revolving around this team archetype. Finally, there's an interesting double assault team with Jane, either Piper or even Nekomata, and a support character or a Seth. In theory, this team should work, and through my limited testing, it felt fine to use. Oh, and I almost forgot about the Bangboos. But overall, Officer Kui is a great choice if you're using Seth or Qingyi with Jane to fulfill its passive, since it deals a decent amount of physical damage and anomaly. If you're running the Disorder team with Grace and Rena, electric anomaly boos like Plug Boo and Electro Boos are great choices. Finally, you can always use Magnetic Boo, since its passive is fulfilled by Jane, who is an anomaly character, and it provides some grouping which Jane definitely appreciates. We've reached the showcase section, and for this I'm just going to commentate. Now we're going to start off with a free-to-play friendly stun build with Ambi, and in this case, Ambi is able to very quickly stun the enemies here for Jane to perform a chain attack to immediately wipe out the first wave. Absolutely amazing synergy right there, as well as bringing Jane straight into her passion state. And now, for some really weird reason, this run was just 20 seconds faster than all my other Ambi attempts. This was a complete outlier, and watching it a couple times, I did not quite figure out why this was the case. In fact, there were even quite a few mistakes made during this run, which you're going to see, very shortly. So yeah, anyway, we can see there that I actually get 2 chain cancels off on this boss, therefore getting at least 2 stuns right there, or 2 assaults during the stun window. And this one should be the 3rd assault, and we can see that the boss is really feeling it. It is taking a ton of damage, so we should be able to finish it off in the next assault. And yeah, again, I did not figure out why this run was so much better than the others, but hey, it was. And just like that, we completed this in 57 seconds with the free-to-play friendly stun Jane. And I did put an asterisk there as well as italicize it, because this was a complete outlier for my Ambi runs. Anyway, up next we have the Hyper Jane archetype, which is a Seth plus a support, in order to just quick swap or quick assist whatever Jane onto the field as much as possible, because both these characters will swap Jane onto the field, because Seth swaps to the previous character and Lucy swaps to the next character. This means, well, as I just said, you're going to be swapping on Jane a ton. It is a very satisfying playstyle, and it is a lot of fun. And as we can see, we're doing reasonable assaults outside of the stun window, but one issue is that, of course, we don't have a stun. And you can see both in the first wave as well as this wave, the boss is taking quite a while to get stunned, as well as, the first wave we didn't have really a stun to open with. We couldn't wipe it out quickly. But anyway, we should be reaching the stun window here, and I think I could have optimized this run a bit by having the boss much closer to an additional assault. That way we can get the classic 3 assaults during the stun window. But it is what it is. We just have this run to live with. And we are seeing 1 million damage number assault on this enemy, which is great to see. Well, almost 1 million, 9.7 or, 970,000 damage. Tons and tons of terrible, terrible damage. If you like big numbers, Jane will not disappoint you. And yeah, the assault team, the Hyper Jane team, doing reasonably well at 70 seconds, which is actually kind of the baseline / norm for most of these runs, was roughly around that amount of time. But anyway, we can see here that we have the same issue with the Disorder team as well. Because we don't have a stun available at the very beginning, we have to kind of manually punch the enemies to death. Now that was actually a really good clear of the first wave without a stunner. I don't know, I seem to have gotten kind of lucky there or something. But anyway, I'm not as familiar with a Disorder team. I think it's going to take someone with a bigger brain than me to kind of really figure out and optimize, and really I just don't have that much experience with it. So again, please take these runs with a giant grain of salt. These are all incredibly anecdotal runs. Literally, I just did this, in a single sitting, because I've got to get this video out to you guys someday, and I can't optimize every single team out there. So yeah, anyway, I try my best to time the anomaly applications very close to each other, so we can get some kind of max number disorders. I see there that was a really nice 800-ish thousand total damage on the assault with the disorder, and if we can activate a shock here, I believe we can get another one, although I guess I'd just go for the assault here instead. Oh no, we got a little disorder there with the assault, and now we got a shock disorder as well as a physical disorder. So yeah, some nice numbers to see, and if you're looking forward to a Disorder team, I believe that it can be done better than what I did here, and this was already very satisfactory performance. Now the next one is the most expensive one with Qingyi as well as Jane, and I have a free-to-play setup here with all of them using, 4-star Wenjins and stuff like that. And in this case, because we have a stunner, we're able to get the chain attack, although there is that weird situation where they all survive with like 1 hit point, and I'm not sure why that is. It's a really annoying thing that I haven't quite figured out why that's the case. I think it has to correlate sometimes with Jane performing the kind of chain stun window, like when you see the chain attack there as an option. Anyway, I'm yapping too much. If you guys want to post an explanation why down in the comments below, you should do that, but I think it's tied to needing the chain attack from Jane, and that's what causes it. Anyway, we go for the classic 3 stun combo against this. Now, the reason why I'm using Cao Cao jump instead is because that way we take a bit longer to activate the chain on it. So, we do an attack with worse frame data in order to get that off. And we can see we're just shy a bit of damage to 1 cycle this thing, which is a bit unfortunate. With this setup and with these Wenjins and stuff like that, we are just shy, so we need another assault to take it out. And still a very good 59-second clear time for the Rat Cat bot team in comparison to, the Ambi team for some reason was such a bizarre outlier. Now anyway, this time I gave the cops a little bit of funding with Jane's signature Wenjin, and I believe Qingyi has her signature Wenjin as well. So you'll see, what kind of improvements that will bring for you. And in particular, that was actually a very poor wave 1, and despite that, you guys will see what happens in wave 2. So regardless, you'll see what it means to actually reach certain damage thresholds, which is pretty important for a stun-based team, because if you're able to really reduce the amount, if you're basically able to 1-cycle the enemy or the boss in this case, that saves a ton of time. Here we can see we're going to go for the 1-cycle with a double chain cancel on Jane, and we are just going for the Cao Cao jump to trigger the chain, get another cancel, get the EX special, as well as another assault. I couldn't see how much damage that one did, but I'm sure it was a pretty big number. And finally, the final assault, dealing 1.28 million and easily single cycling it for a very fast 47-second clear time. Now, I'm sure if we threw on some decent Wenjins on the other characters and other teams, they would also drastically improve their times. But I wanted to give at least one example with her signature Wenjin before moving off of the showcase section. So I also did a Piper run, as you can see in the chart. However, it just felt like it wasn't that interesting to me. It was very similar to kind of the Disorder Jane Grace team, except instead of Disorder, you just kind of use Piper when she has energy. So yeah, it did fine. All these teams are doing fine, and against physical weak areas, Jane is going to do incredibly well. I don't think you're going to be disappointed, and you're going to have a lot of fun dealing some massive assaults. Let me know what you think about Jane Doe down in the comments below. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.